Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Transformation Tuesday, coming to you from beautiful Scarborough. Check out the sunset. I get to watch this every night, and it's a beautiful place to live here in Perth. So good evening, guys. Tonight, I'm going to be sharing with you one of the most powerful concepts in all of personal development. And tonight's topic is the ego. How do we master the ego? How do we truly take an understanding of the ego such that we become empowered? How do we create better results across all the different areas of our life? And how do we understand it? How do we know it at a level deeper so that we can truly become the master of our ego? Hello, Angela, and welcome. Welcome to you. So this concept tonight, I can't stress how important understanding our ego is and then being able to do something about the ego, because I've studied a lot of personal development. I've spent thousands of hours in trainings and coaching, and I've done seminars, courses, books, like you name it. I've done a lot of study, and I don't think I've come across something that is as powerful in everything that I've studied as this topic that I'm going to share with you tonight. So for me, when I really started researching and understanding about this topic, it was a game changer. And I know that that word gets used a lot. Oh, it's a game changer. This one really is, because if you truly get what I'm about to share with you, there's so many levels. This goes so deep into so many levels. So I don't expect you all to fully comprehend and understand it all completely now, because to go to the level needed to really unpack this conversation is weeks worth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the most powerful nuggets of wisdom here that I can and unpack this, because when you get this concept, your life just radically will shift in the most magical direction you probably didn't even dream was possible. So I'm going to dive in and I'm going to share with you, well, what is this all about, and how do we actually apply this? How do we make this tangible? Hey, Grant. Hey, John. Good to see you here, guys. Yeah, you're welcome, Angela. So let's dive in. So first of all, what is the ego? Well, the ego is, I'll give you an example. The ego is like a virus that is on a computer, right? So we imagine that we're a computer, and we now have this virus that's been loaded onto us, which is called the ego. Now, this virus, it basically affects our performance. It means that we can't run at our optimum capacity. It gets the better of us, and it essentially limits our capacity to live a life that is. This might sound a little bit woo-woo, but ultimately the ego prevents us, and it's a program, it's a fear-based program that prevents us from being the expression of our spirit, from being the expression of our soul, right? We all have a purpose. We all have something that we're here to do in life. And if we are driven by our ego, which is a fear-based virus that's been loaded onto the human system, if we are driven by that program, then we won't access what's the reason why we're here. We won't get access to our purpose. Hey, Elise. Hey, Steve. Good to see you guys here. Hope you're doing well. So we need to understand that the ego is like a virus. And unless we understand how the ego operates, we are not able to use our own internal antivirus software to cleanse ourselves of the effects of the ego. So let me tell you a bit more about it. Well, the ego it's a fear-based program. And it's a fear-based program that is quite prehistoric. It is very prehistoric, and it's a survival-based program. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. It's a survival-based program. So what does that mean? Well, the ego is here to keep us safe. It's here to keep us limited. It's here to protect us from taking any unnecessary risks. It's here to protect us and keep us boxed in so that we stay safe and so that we survive. Now, it's a useful program when you need to run away from dinosaurs and lions and tigers and all that kind of stuff. But in the year 2018, it's not a very useful program. So hence, we no longer need this program. It doesn't serve us really in any way except for survival. So now that we've evolved beyond the need to survive, the ego is still there. So it's like a virus that has been installed, that's been loaded on, and it's stuck with us. Unfortunately, there's no way of removing the ego from the human operating system, right? We just have to become aware of it, and then we can move beyond it. So this is what I want to share with you tonight is how do we effectively install our own antivirus software to deal with the ego? How do we notice when the ego is running us as opposed to our spirit running us? And the metaphor I use for this is your ego could either be driving your car, or you could tell the ego to hop in the back seat and your spirit can drive the car. So you either get to be driven by a fear-based program, which is effectively unconsciously running your life, or you tell the ego to hop in the back seat and your spirit actually drives your car. So you get to decide your destiny rather than some prehistoric program. So cool to know. So let's dive into exploring, what are some examples of this? Well, I'll give you a good example. One of the programs of the ego is a thing called judgment. And you've probably heard of it. So drop a comment below if you've heard of the concept of judgment before. Judgment is one of these master programs of the ego, which, if unobserved, it is going to completely sabotage and it's going to completely destroy your life. And I'll give you some examples of that. So what do I mean when I talk about judgment? Well, I'm not talking about your ability to decide whether to cross the road safely and judge if it's safe to cross the road, or judge if I should eat that food or eat that food. What I'm talking about here is criticism. I'm talking about negative energy being thrown at something to diminish something in terms of its validity. So what's an example? Well, you guys have probably all heard of tall poppy syndrome. Yeah? Let me know if you guys have heard of tall poppy syndrome. So in Australia, for those of you guys tuning in from overseas, in Australia we have a thing called tall poppy syndrome, which is essentially judgment, the ego operating at its finest, well, maybe not at its finest, at its worst. So the tall poppy syndrome really is a program where we would like to diminish someone else to peg them back a few rungs, to basically knock them back, to create the illusion that we are doing better than what we are. So that's an example of the program of the ego playing out in the context of judgment in tall poppy syndrome. So, there's two ways of building the tallest building in town, right? You can either build the tallest building and build it higher than anyone else, or you could knock someone else's building down and then your building by default becomes taller than everyone else's. So that's what tall poppy syndrome is. Hey Dave, good to see you here. Hey Caddy. So we need to understand that this program is playing out, and it's like a law, just like the law of gravity. Even if you don't agree with gravity, or even if you aren't aware of gravity, it's still operating. So it's the same thing with the ego. So the ego is one of the most misunderstood parts of the human being. And as I said before, I've studied a lot of personal development, and this is going to be it is the most important concept from a human behavioral point of view, from a consciousness point of view, from anyone who's wanting to live their best life point of view. If you don't intimately, completely understand this concept, then you're at a significant disadvantage, and you've got several handbrakes that are on. You've got many handbrakes that are on, preventing you from absolutely ripping it up the highway, and you may not even be aware of it. And so this is why I'm sharing this topic tonight, and I'm speaking into it. I'm saying this is one of the most, if not the most powerful concept in personal development, which is very, very poorly documented. It's not very well, it's not even discussed. It's something certainly I didn't learn about in most of all the trainings that I went to. And I did a lot of trainings, and it was never really spoken about. It was given very, very surface level treatment. So I hope you guys appreciate when I recommend something like this and say it's the most important concept in personal development, I actually mean it. And it's not just some hyped up rah-rah inflating, Chris is just trying to sell something. It's actually super important. Now, let me tell you a bit more about judgment. Judgment pretends to be necessary, but it's absolutely not. And I'll give you some examples, because a lot of people think that judgment, and I want to define judgment for you, because when we truly understand this distinction, this gives a lot of clarity and this gives a lot of awareness about the ego. So what we need to understand is we don't have to judge anything in life. Now, when I say judgment, I'm talking about the diminishment of something. I'm talking about us, it's almost like we're literally picking up a lump of shit and we're throwing it. And we're saying, I don't like that, it's not good, it's invalid, we're diminishing something in terms of its worthiness, in terms of its validity as a concept. So I want to give you an example. We can look at someone's behavior, right? And we can make a judgment and say, well, look, do I agree with it, right? Then you can go a step further and you could judge it as being negative. So I'll give you one example. Let's just say, for example, we're looking at someone who, violence, for example. You could look at violence as an act. Now, what you could do is you could look at violence and you can actually diminish that person and say, that person who committed that act, they're horrible. They're a shocking human being. They shouldn't be allowed to, they're this, they're that. We're throwing negative energy. We're diminishing that person and their worthiness, right? Now, this is an extreme example. Very, very extreme example. And I want to give you an extreme example so you can see this. What I'm saying is you can avoid judging that person, and it doesn't mean that you condone violence. Not at all. You can simply not judge that person because you don't know why they did what they did necessarily. Again, maybe they've been through some incredible trauma. Who knows what they've been through that led them to making that decision to indulge in violence. So we can simply observe the behavior and say, well, you know what? I don't particularly agree with it, but I'm not going to judge that person and diminish that person, that human being, and make them wrong and make them invalid and just throw hate at them. I'm going to say, well, look, I don't agree with it. I wouldn't personally do it, but I'm not going to necessarily now indulge in hate, in a fear-based activity of diminishing you as a person. Right? Yes, we can not necessarily agree with the action, but ultimately that person, if we're now judging the person and diminishing them at the soul level, as a human being level, that is the ego operating. That's ego. This is what the ego is. So you can apply this to anything. You could apply this to someone lying. You could apply this to someone committing crimes. Again, we can approach this from a place of compassion, from a place of love. Doesn't necessarily mean we condone it. Doesn't mean we condone it. Doesn't mean we support that. But what we do is we have compassion for the person, have compassion for their situation, and we don't necessarily have to diminish them as a person. We can acknowledge, well, it's not necessarily behavior that we want to do and that we certainly don't want to encourage it, but we don't have to judge them and diminish them because that's a fear-based activity. So I just want to give you that example, that context. So the distinction here that is going to make a hell of a lot of difference is the difference between judgment and what I call discernment. So I want to explain both of these for you, because when we truly understand both of these principles, this gives a lot more clarity to this concept, and we can start to free ourselves up from buying into throwing negative energy at, diminishing, and ultimately invalidating other people and other entities. So what do I mean? Well, let's just say, for example, and this is another very, very simple example. This is the difference between, say, for example, chocolate and vanilla ice cream. Really, really simple. Now, let's just say, for example, you hate chocolate, like you really, really don't like it. It's like the worst flavor ever. Now, when you go to order the flavor of ice cream, you could look at chocolate and go, oh my God, that's horrible. I would never order that. That's horrible. That's the worst flavor ever. You're wrong. You're invalid. I'm never going to order you. What are you doing? Get out of my face, right? And then we go, right, and I'm going to get vanilla instead. Now, that is a very, very extreme example of it's actually accurate for a lot of people, what's actually happening when we go to make a decision in life. We look at something, we diminish it. We go, nah, that's horrible. I'm not going with that. Now, I'll give you a different scenario, or a different way to approach that. You could look at chocolate and go, you know what? It's not my flavor. It's not my preference. I'm going to select vanilla. I'm going to go with vanilla, right? That's simply preference. You get the difference? One is a very light feeling, which is just preference. Do I want to go left or right? Do I want to go chocolate or vanilla? Let's go vanilla. That's a very, very loving way to live your life, as opposed to diminishing and demeaning and minimizing and invalidating that option. We just simply say, it's not my option. It's not for me. I'm going to go with that one. So one is coming from a place of fear, right, which is the ego, which is to diminish something. The other is coming from a place of love, which is the opposite end of the spectrum. Now, this is the key difference. If we are coming from a place of fear, i.e. the ego, what do you think the implications are for you? What do you think that means? If you are being driven by the ego, if it's a fear-based program, do you think you're expanded, or do you think you're limited? Do you think you're going to be expanded, or do you think you're going to be limited? Yeah, thank you, Dave, right? It's the lighter option. It just feels light. It just feels easy. So we don't have to go through life diminishing and throwing negative energy at options. We can just simply say, you know what? Not for me. I'm going to go with that. We can look at someone else's behavior and go, look, I don't agree with it. I'm not going to judge them. I have compassion for them. Bless you with love. I wish the best for you. Bless you on your way. I don't agree with your behavior, but I would do this. So thank you, Dave. So this really is about, well, do we want to be expanded or diminished? Now, when your ego is operating, it's almost, well, I would say when your ego is running you, it's like a program. It's like a habit. It's like a preset condition that's operating, that's driving you. So this is a really important concept, because if your ego is driving you, then you've lost control over the direction where you're going, because it's a fear-based program. It's a fear-based program, which is, who knows where you might end up. If you're judging and letting fear run your choices and your decisions in life, a very, very limited way to live your life, as opposed to choosing to come from a place of discernment, which is a different distinction than judgment. Discernment is simply coming from a place of preference. A very, very light choice of, do I want to go left or right? Chocolate, vanilla. So very, very powerful concept, because we can swap out every single one of our judgments in our life with discernment. I'll say that again. We can swap out every single judgment that we make. We can swap that out with simply making a discernment, making a preferential choice. So, when you turn on the TV and when you see violence, when you see politicians being dishonest, when you see crime, when you see anything that you don't resonate with, you could look at it and you could buy into it, and you could experience suffering and sadness, and you could experience all those sorts of negative emotions that come along with if you're wanting to buy in with judging something. But try out a different energy. What if you were to look at that behavior, look at that scenario, look at that example, and just say, you know what? Not my bag. I'd prefer not to experience that. And so you then have compassion for it. You then can forgive it. You can come from a place of love, coming from a place of understanding, well, maybe the reason why that person's doing what they're doing is because of a really complicated, complex, convoluted, really unfortunate set of circumstances that's creating them to do what they're doing. So therefore, by us coming from a place of compassion, coming from a place of love, doesn't mean we condone it, doesn't mean we want it to happen, but what it does is it releases the resistance and the fear behind judging it, and we can just say, you know what, I prefer something else. So again, we don't have to judge it. We don't have to buy into the negativity around disagreeing with something and making it invalid. So this is a really important principle, because when you swap your judgment for discernment, for preference, your life transforms. Every single decision, every single perspective that you have in life shifts, because you now no longer have to buy into the negativity of judging something. Thanks, Dave. Shifting from judgment to discernment. I'm so adopting. Mate, this is a game changer. And I don't say that word lightly, but ultimately, if people understood this concept and were acutely aware of it, then people would be aware of when their ego was operating them. Because if we are not aware of this distinction, then all that happens is people lump this concept all into one. They just say, well, there's positive judgment and negative judgment and sort of a bit of a grey area. Well, what I want to suggest is we never ever have to judge anything, which is, when I say judge, I mean diminish someone or something in terms of its worthiness. So if we're judging another human being and saying, because this is ultimately what we're doing, if we judge another human being's actions or behavior, what we're actually doing is we're saying, you are less worthy a human being than me. You are less worthy than I am. Now that is the ego. That is your ego wanting to justify yourself. That is your ego wanting you to feel more valid, wanting you to feel more... It's your ego wanting you to feel more valid. That's what it is. Because think about it. Your spirit, like your soul behind all of this, you already are, you're all good. You're an unconditional, powerful, spiritual, infinite being behind this. This is a virtual reality simulator ride, and your ego is telling you that you need to diminish someone else so that you can feel good, like tall poppy syndrome. But the reality is, you already are enough. You already are good enough. You already are worthy of love. And it's your ego playing a trick on you, trying to convince you that you need to justify yourself in order to be more worthy than them, so you can feel good about yourself, so you can love yourself. So this is kind of the covert game that's going on, if you like, that's actually happening behind the scenes. And this is how the program of the ego is playing out. So good to be aware of. I would say great to be aware of, because whenever we're aware of judgment, we can safely say, well, right now my ego is operating me, which means, okay, I'm now being run by a program as opposed to me consciously choosing and deciding my life from a place of conscious awareness. So good to know. So, well, what do we now do with this? Well, what I suggest you do to make this really, really tangible is you want to set an awareness exercise for yourself. Right? Now, what is the awareness exercise? What you want to do is you want to set an awareness exercise for the next week. So for the next 7 days, you want to set your intention, you want to put it on your agenda to be aware of every time I judge someone or something else, or judge yourself. Because every time you become aware of that, you can then acknowledge, oh, okay, my ego was just operating then. And by being aware of your ego, you now can overcome it, because you cannot overcome anything that you're not aware of. If you don't know about it, you can't overcome it. So until you create awareness of these distinctions and start to create observation of where this is playing out, it's like you've got a problem that you don't know about. It really is a problem that you don't know about. But the thing, just like gravity, is whether you're aware of it or not, or whether you agree with it or not, it's still happening and it's still affecting you. So this will be one of the major handbrakes that you can release from your life when you start to become acutely aware of all the elements of judgment in your life, and then you can release them. You can let it go. And instead of feeling a heaviness and a level of resistance, you can let it all go. And what you're left with is a feeling of lightness, which is a sign that your spirit is now operating you. You're now choosing your life based out of what your spirit wants, as opposed to a virus, which is a program, a very, very archaic, prehistoric virus that's been loaded onto your software program as a human that's running you. So this is a very, very powerful distinction that will create profound shifts, provided that you have awareness of them. So again, this awareness activity is every day. I want you to set yourself an awareness of, rightio, today I'm on judgment watch. I'm on judgment watch. Where am I judging? Now, anytime you notice that you're judging something, like you might be walking down the street and you might look at someone who's overweight, or you might look at someone who's smoking, or you might look at someone who's swearing, and you're going to look at someone and you're going to then judge them. Well, that's the trigger. You want to become aware of, I just judged that person. I just threw a big lump of negative energy at that person and I just diminished them. What was going on there? Was that love? Of course it wasn't. Was that my spirit? Was that my soul? Of course it wasn't. That was some prehistoric program. That was some sort of habit, that conditioned habit that's been with me since I was born. The virus that's been loaded on that's operating. And I don't want to come from that place. I don't know about you guys, but I don't like the idea of a fear-based program running my life and just throwing negative energy, just diminishing people. I prefer to much come from a place of love. And the ultimate question here is, what would love do? What would love do? Now, this is the other thing. Don't misunderstand this. Love is not passive. Love is not complacent, right? We can still have compassion for and love the stuff that we don't necessarily resonate with, right? We can love everything about ourselves. We can love everything about life. Doesn't necessarily mean we don't want to change it. So here's the thing. Don't mistake being loving as being a weakness. Love is the highest form of power. And so this is one of the key distinctions I don't want you to make the mistake of making, which is thinking that love is weakness, thinking that compassion is weakness. No, not at all. It's the opposite. It is releasing the resistance that we've got to our experience. And as soon as we have compassion for or love for something, or have acceptance, forgiveness, and ultimately compassion, the trifecta, acceptance, forgiveness, compassion, those three, boom. You now release the ego, you can release the negative resistance, you release the fear, and you now move into a place of operating out of your spirit. Your spirit's now driving you, right? A very empowered place to be. So taking this back to the awareness exercise, you want to be acutely aware of every moment during your day when you're judging. So set yourself an alarm on your phone to put yourself on judgment watch. I like that, Operation Judgment Watch. So what I do, and this is more of an advanced approach, I have an alarm that goes off my phone every single hour of the day. And what it does is it triggers a protocol, which is a little mini meditation, a guided meditation and a releasing process that I do every single hour from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. And in each and every hour when that alarm goes off, I now reflect on, okay, where was I indulging in judgment? Where was my ego running me? Where was that fear-based, resistance-based program operating? And then I can release it. I can now release that. So first step is awareness. You need to have awareness of the judgment. Once you have awareness of it, you can now understand, okay, I can now let it go. I can now observe it. I can release it. And then the next step is you then start to compensate or combat the judgment. So what can you do to combat it? Well, what you can do is when you see someone who you know you've just judged, might be someone who's overweight or smoking, or someone who's, as I said, someone who's, you might see violence, or you might see something in there, right? And your natural default virus program of the ego is, this natural default is to go, I'm going to diminish that. That's horrible. That's nasty. I'm going to invalidate that. You can intercept it, right? And you can intercept it and go, I was just about to throw negativity at that. And you know what I'm going to throw instead? I'm going to bless it. And when I say bless it, the word, the energy behind blessing it is Don't confuse this with anything necessarily religious based. When I say blessing, pretty much imagine that you're infusing love, kindness, strength, courage, compassion, all in this beautiful packet of very positive energy, and you say, you know what, I'm going to bless you on your way. Bless you. So instead of sending hate and judgment, you just bless them on their way. That's a pretty powerful way to be. So again, the question that you want to ask is, well, what would love do? Love would just bless it. Now again, this isn't necessarily being complacent and accepting that. When I say accepting, I'm not necessarily saying we are supporting that behavior. But what we are doing is we're releasing our resistance and our grip on the judgment and the negativity that we are connected to that experience through. So we just bless it. We just bless it with love. Bless you, bless you. And you just get in the habit of, I do this walking around the city. Literally, as I'm walking around, I just say, bless you, bless you. I'd literally bless everyone I come into contact with. Blessing all of you guys now watching this. Bless, and when I'm sending an email, bless you. I've just sent an email to someone, bless you. Pick up the phone, someone's speaking, bless you. Right? See someone doing something I don't particularly like, bless you. See Donald Trump getting on the TV, saying some nasty tweets. I go, look, bless you, mate. Bless you on your way. So I'm mindful that I'm not wanting to get sucked into judging and buying into the negativity, because it's detracting from who and what I am at my core, and it's taking me away from love. So again, judgment is the enemy of love. Judgment is the ultimate tool of the ego that the ego uses to control, to manipulate, to diminish, right? To diminish everything in your experience. Thank you, Mike. Bless you, brother. Bless everyone. Bless, setting everyone like massive big oodle bundles of love and blessing energy. Bless the world, right? So here's the thing, is when you truly understand this concept of judgment and discernment, that you can simply make preferences without buying into the judgment, this is one of the most liberating, freeing concepts that you will ever discover in your life. Trust me. And since I've been practicing this concept, since I've been doing these awareness exercises, these judgment watch activities, I'm now very, very acutely aware of, as soon as I've judged someone, I go, I've just judged them. Bless you. Bless you. Now, that's stage one. Now, in some other Facebook Live videos, I'm going to be expanding upon this concept, because where you are judging someone else is very, very valuable information. Very, very valuable information about where you're also possibly judging parts of yourself. So there's a beautiful realization here. If we are now judging something, someone, some scenario in our environment, this is now a bit more of an advanced concept. But what it actually is, it's a projection of our own internal consciousness. We're now projecting something onto that experience, and we are labeling it, and we're making it mean something. Now, this is a really powerful concept, and I'm just going to touch on it today. I'm going to go into it more detail later on, but I'll leave this with you to have a bit of to contemplate this and think about this. Because think about this. You and me could both be watching the same event. We're both looking at the same scenario, same person, same comment, same language, same activity. And you and I are both looking at the same thing. And I look at it, and maybe I have compassion, neutrality, maybe I just bless it with love. You might look at it and you see hatred, aggression, anger, evil, whatever. So who's right or who's wrong? Are you right or am I right? Maybe there is no right and wrong. All there is a different perspective that gets created from you looking at the same thing that I'm looking at, but you're looking from a different angle. So your truth is different than my truth, but ultimately all that matters here is, well, hang on, is your construction and your projection from the way you're viewing that situation from, is it serving you? And ultimately, where you look at something from, there could be 1,000 other people looking at it from a different perspective, and we're all looking at life from different perspectives. When I say different perspectives, we've all got different upbringings, different family backgrounds, different cultures, maybe different languages, different experiences through life. So we're all looking at life through a different lens. So every single one of us is going to look at the same scenario and come up with a different perspective, come up with a different philosophy. So ultimately we've got to ask, well, what's actually true? Is our perspective actually serving us? Now, the answer to that is a pretty deep one, but ultimately you've got to recognize that every perspective that you have on a topic, your attitude, your beliefs, your values, all these things you've got, they're all made up. They're all your perspective. They're unique you're unique to you. And there's like 7 or 8 billion people in the world, right? So every single one of those 8 billion people, each has a different perspective, a unique perspective. We would label the same experience with different language, different experiences, different meaning. So ultimately we can conclude, well, if 8 billion people are all looking at the same event and we all come up with a different conclusion, well, it's us. It's me. I as the individual, I am creating my reality right now through the lens and through the experience that I'm looking at that event. So I'm creating it. And for every event that you look at, that you construct anger or fear or sadness or regret, someone else might be looking at the same thing with gratitude and love and appreciation. So it's like, whoa, if someone else could look at the same thing and experience love and gratitude and appreciation, we've got to get curious. Wow, that's some serious emotional mastery right there. How are they doing that? We've got to get curious. Good question to ask. And what you'll find is everything that we're experiencing, all the meanings of the events of our lives, all the emotions, all the labels we're using, the language we're using, it's all us. We are the constructors of our reality. We are projecting it at every single moment in time. We are projecting language, meaning, we're projecting emotion, we are projecting the whole lot. And again, when we actually take responsibility for, well, my experience of my reality is me, I'm creating it right now in each and every moment. I could be labeling it as either good or bad. I could either judge it or simply discern it. I could have gratitude for it, I could hate it. I could send you love or I could send you hatred. These are the little micro decisions that are happening in every single moment. And it's all our projection. We are simply projecting our meaning and our interpretation onto every single event. And this has been happening since the moment we were born. And this concept has what has been creating our sense of story, our sense of meaning, our sense of if we're living a good life or a bad life, our sense of if generally our philosophy for living. So this is pure empowerment when we can actually recognize, you know what? We're all creating our reality through how we are viewing reality. Now this is a deep concept. I'm going to be doing multiple Facebook Lives covering this because this sort of takes this concept a level deeper. But I just wanted to keep this relatively short and sharp for today and just introduce you to some major powerful principles in and around the ego and specifically judgment and discernment. So thank you guys for tuning in. Please, if you guys have questions, please shoot me through heaps of questions. I love this topic. It's something that I believe everyone needs to know about. I believe that if children got taught this concept when they were growing up, this world would be so much of a better place. So please, if you have questions, please ask me. I'm always happy to share what I can with you guys. Thank you for tuning in. And your home play, your tasking for this week is to set yourself an awareness exercise, which is be on judgment watch. Be aware of where you're judging. And whenever you're aware of your judgment, bless it. Bless it with love. Bless it on its way. You don't have to judge something. You don't have to diminish it. You can just say, you know what? Not my bag, but bless you anyway. So there you go. I trust that serves, guys. I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. And if you resonate with this stuff, guys, please share it with your friends, share the links. And I look forward to sharing more of this gold with you guys as we go on the journey. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Much love. I'll see you guys soon. Bye for now.